Many of you will know Caroline Brewer from one of our 3 previous very successful Taking Nature Black conferences. For those, she served as chairwoman. She was mastermind, coach, problem solver, visionary, a number of other titles. I mean, she really held the conference together and really helped it grow exponentially. But I've had the pleasure of knowing Caroline a lot longer. We've been co-workers in at least 3 workplaces. In 2 of those, including here at Nature Forward, she was my supervisor. But long before that, we were and continue to be lifelong friends. So when Caroline left Nature Forward to pursue her passion as a children's book author full-time, a lot of people were shocked. I really wasn't that surprised because I've been a fan of Caroline's books since way back, since her first book, Kara Finds Sunshine on a Rainy Day. And I've been a fan of every book that's come since. And her latest book, Say Their Names, it's a masterpiece. And it's a masterpiece that is right on time for these times that we live in today. And I'm just going to call on everyone right now. You have to make this book a bestseller. A bestseller. And I'm not saying this strictly for Caroline's sake, but for our sake. I live in the state of Florida. Love the weather, love being able to walk on the beach. But if you've watched the news and you've seen the level of crazy that's happening politically in Florida, banning books, protecting Confederate monuments, and it's a crazy that other states are hoping to emulate. So Say Their Names is a book, it would be outright banned in my state of Florida. It is Black. It is proud, it is defiant, but like everything I've ever seen Caroline write or nurture or touch, like this conference, Say Their Names is also peaceful, it's loving, it's inclusive, it's instructive, it's hopeful, it's truthful. Like I said, it's the right book at the right time. And I thank her publisher, Raycraft Books, for the courage to publish it. I thank Caroline for the vision to create it, and I thank her for the groundwork that she laid for this conference. And I thank her for returning tonight to share the message that you're about to hear this evening. I am honored to welcome and introduce Caroline Brewer.
Thank you so much, Vince, for that incredibly warm and generous introduction. I just want to say that I am grateful for so much. I am grateful to Nature Forward and the Taking Nature Black Conference, to the committee, to the board, to Vince as the chair, and Vanessa as the conference planner, and to all of you for the opportunity to be here today and to share this talk, The Environment, a Love Story, and a Reason to Say Their Names. And I've been thinking a lot about gratitude lately. It's been one of my favorite things in my life to keep in front of me. And I was shaking my head when Vince was talking about how far back we go, like way back. I'm like, no, Vince, this not that far back. Shh. Just a little ways. But more than time, I feel so blessed to have Vince as a friend and to have Nature Forward as a friend, because all of you have just been exceptional. You have helped to shape my life in ways that I never imagined were possible. And even though I left Nature Forward and left the conference, which was so hard to do, it was really agonizing for me. I knew that it was going to be in terrific hands, and what we have seen so far this week, and I know what we'll see tomorrow and Saturday, will make that abundantly clear, that this conference is alive and well and thriving. And so please give all of yourselves a hand for being a part of that and supporting Vince and all of the team at Nature Forward. So with that, I would like to get into this love story, and I'd also like to introduce some friends who are joining me tonight and who have a really special role to play on this program. Karen Wilson Ama Achefu, who you've seen, I think, at every Taking Nature Black conference prior to this one, except the first one. And then dear friend Al McCrae. These are professional singers. They have worked with some big names in the industry, and they were kind enough to join me on this Zoom virtual presentation so that we could create a more intimate feeling of an audience, and so that we could do our call and response thing and our singing thing, which is also a big part of Taking Nature Black. So with that, Dr. Maya Angelou is not only a creature of nature, she is a force of nature. She once announced herself as phenomenal, doing things phenomenally. And she said, so are we. Like all of nature, like all that is the environment, we human beings are phenomenal. As a phenomenal element of nature, for 22 years, John Francis, the planet walker, faced his fears. He chose to walk, never driving or riding in a car, a train, a bus, or a plane. He chose to walk, and he chose to not talk. So disturbed was he the day Standard Oil tankers collided and flooded the San Francisco Bay with millions of gallons of oil. So on Francis's sojourns across the USA, he was silently having his say about the environment. And he concluded that the environment is how we treat each other. And how we treat each other morally manifests materially. So we would be wise to treat nature, which includes us, imperially, serially. Holler or put something in the chat if you're hearing me. Likewise, before Francis, there was Linton K. Caldwell, who authored the National Environmental Protection Act. He stated, as a matter of fact, that the crisis of the environment that we see outwardly is a crisis of mind and spirit, meaning it's about what's going on inside of us, internally. Caldwell said, it's not just endangered wildlife. No, don't get it twisted. If you're thinking it's all about pollution, then you've gone somewhere and missed it. You didn't get the gist of it. So here's Caldwell again to assist with it. He said the crisis is the kind of creatures we are and what we must become if we are to survive. What kind of creatures we are. What kind of creatures we are thus far. What say the stars? How are we treating one another, whether near or far? The scientists are saying how we treat each other shows up in the environment. It manifests. Walk a trail, climb a mountain, sit on the beach, soak up the sun, wade in the water, catch the dolphins dipping, trade breaths with the trees, watch the squirrels twirl and the buzzing bees, glimpse the butterflies flit and flutter, set your sights on the birds as they soar, bathe in the honor of their song, pluck tomatoes grown from the seeds that your hands planted. Do all this, and you'll be basking in the bliss of so many segments of the environment. Well, I am here to suggest that we do our level best to become creatures who understand this allegory. We are involved in the most powerful love story to Mother Nature. As we walk trails and climb mountains, we give the glory. From the first breath, we were signatories. We became signatories to support and promote for everything nature made the highest and best outcomes. For the squirrels as they twirl, for trading breaths with the trees and the buzzing bees, the highest and best outcomes. A love story is not made of leftovers or that pile of breadcrumbs or a basket of sugar plums or a 5th gallon of rum. My author friend Michelle Pettis said, a love story is you, nature, and me, promoting the highest and best outcomes for one another through all eternity. And our love story with nature is insisting that we continue to grow, that we continue to sow, because it's we who are facing the greatest threats our planet has ever known. So we must become something more, something that we can adore, something like Maya Angelou, something phenomenal for us, the environment. So I'd like to share 5 things that we can do to become something more, something that we can adore, to be a good partner in this love story of protecting the environment. First, recognize that we are in a love story. Give Mother Nature the glory. 2, gather our gifts, such as courage, hope, truth, and let it be swift. Gather our gifts, such as friends, family, community, peace, grace, gratitude, and unity. Gather our gifts. And then tap into that one superpower called love to change the game. Become peerless, number 4, when it comes to being fearless. 5, fight all day and all night, harder and smarter until we get it right. 5 things. Recognize we're in a love story. Gather our gifts. Tap into that superpower. Become fearless and fight. So I came up with an acronym for these 5 things, but it's not terribly memorable. So I searched for a blueprint, didn't even have to sprint, found it in this short and sweet book that just so happens to carry my fingerprints. It's of course called Say Their Names. I'm listed as the author, but in reality, this story was flowing through my veins. It needed somewhere to go, and I agreed to be the vessel. And ever since, I haven't been the same. Say Their Names on its face is about 7-year-old Aaliyah's quest to create a love-inspired movement in response to the George Floyd murder and the protest. And with that, we're blessed. This child meets the test. And yet with a closer look, I had to confess that Aaliyah reveals the 5 things that we need to change this doggone game. So we, Karen and Al and I, are going to share a portion of the blueprint that Aaliyah lays out for us. And you'll find the rest of it in the book. And then there's a breakdown that I can share. I always read this book interactively, as is the case with all of my books and all of my poetry. And so that's why I invited, as I said earlier, Karen and Al to join us. So stay tuned because we're going to ask you to join us as well. I won't be able to hear you, that's true, but I promise I'll be able to feel you. So here we go. Mama, Daddy, I want to say their names. Get out the back seat, put a pause on my games. Color outside the lines and loudly proclaim love for myself as I say their names. I look around at the broken, the battered. I hear the cries of the scorn, the tattered. I feel the angels weep. Can you say that with me?
I feel the angels weep.
I feel the angels weep.
I feel the angels weep.
Because these lives mattered.
Because these lives matter.
And it makes me want to say their names.
And it makes me want to say their names.
I hear the storm of black anger and sound. I feel heavy hearts and itchy feet pound. I see us coming up. Can you say that with me?
I see us coming up.
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 I see us coming up from the underground. And it makes me want to do what?
Say their names.
And so I'm going to ask you to repeat these names after me. Here's a page in the book. Ayanna Stanley Jones.
Ayanna Stanley Jones.
Breonna Taylor.
Breonna Taylor.
Fannie Lou Hamer.
Fannie Lou Hamer.
Charlena Lyles.
Charlena Lyles.
Eleanor Bumpers.
Eleanor Bumpers.
India Kager.
India Kager.
Corinne Gaines.
Corinne Gaines.
Michelle Cusseau.
Michelle Cusseau.
Sandra Bland.
Sandra Bland.
Ball your fist.
Ball your fist.
Push up your hand.
Push up your hand.
When we ball our fists, this is a symbol of solidarity. It started in Europe, not here in the United States, but it means solidarity. It's a reflection of the fact that 5 fingers, each one individually, can do something. But when they come together, they can do more. They're more powerful. So that's why we ball our fist, push up our hand. We the people must take a stand. Change gon' come. Can you say that with me?
Change gon' come.
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 With our demands.
With our demands.
Come on. And say their names. Amadou Diallo.
Amadou Diallo.
Eric Garner.
Eric Garner.
Ahmaud Arbery.
Ahmaud Arbery.
Freddie Gray.
Freddie Gray.
George Floyd.
George Floyd.
Jordan Davis.
Jordan Davis.
Michael Brown.
Michael Brown.
Philando Castile.
Philando Castile.
Tyree Nichols.
Tyree Nichols.
Trayvon Martin.
Trayvon Martin.
Tamir Rice.
Tamir Rice.
They paid a price. Let's perfume the planet. Let's say their names. Let rivers of love wash away this pain. Love for our oneness we loudly proclaim. Can you say that with me? love for our oneness, we loudly proclaim. Come on and say their names. And I'm going to ask you to repeat this next section with me. Speak light.
Speak light.
Say their names.
Say their names.
Speak love.
Speak love.
Say their names.
Say their names.
Speak freedom.
Speak freedom.
Say their names.
Say their names.
Rise, children, rise.
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 Say their names.
Say their names.
Amphibians, African and Asian elephants.
Amphibians,
African and Asian elephants.
Birds, beetles, butterflies.
Birds, beetles, butterflies.
Creeks, coral reefs, deltas, and dolphins. Creeks, coral reefs, deltas, and dolphins. Say their names.
Say their names.
Fresh water, groundwater, grasshoppers, gorillas. Fresh water, groundwater, grasshoppers, gorillas. Great white sharks, honeybees. Great white sharks, honeybees.
Honeybees.
Ice caps, iguanas, insects.
Ice caps, iguanas, insects.
Lions, penguins, polar bears. Lions, penguins, polar bears. Say their names.
Say their names.
Orangutans, the ocean, ozone. Orangutans,
the oceans, ozones.
Rainforest, rivers, sea lions, soil.
Rainforests, rivers, sea lions, soil.
Tigers, tortoises, turtles.
Tigers, tortoises, turtles.
Wetlands, whales.
Wetlands, whales.
Say their names.
Say their names.
Let's perfume the planet.
Let's perfume the planet.
Let's say their names.
Let's say their names.
Let rivers of love
Let rivers of love
wash away this pain.
wash away this pain.
Love for our oneness
Love for our oneness.
as phenomenal elements of the environment.
As phenomenal elements of the environment,
We loudly proclaim.
We
loudly proclaim.
Come on and say their names. I'd like to pause here for just a few moments of silence. Thank you. Common, the rapper, with John Legend, tells us in the song Glory, somewhere in the dream, we had an epiphany. Now we right the wrongs in history. No one can win the war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy. One day,
when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. One day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Glory, 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 Glory,
Glory,
glory,
glory,
oh, glory,
oh, glory,
oh, glory.
It will be ours, and it will be something bigger than ourselves. As Aaliyah goes about gathering her friends, her family, and her community to say their names, she understands why. Why saying their names is so powerful and so transformative. And so I wanted to share some of what Aaliyah understands with you. Why do we say their names? We say their names so the stars will marvel at us. We say their names because in our oneness we trust. We say their names because as things are and always were, the environment is us. Birds, bees too. We are all nature. We say their names to shine lights in the darkness and be free. We say their names to fight the powers that claim to be. We say their names because, like Frederick Douglass, we prefer revolution to bondage. Like Sojourner Truth, to the infinite, we pay homage. We say their names because this land is supposed to be our land. From California to the New York Island. The land is supposed to be made for you and me. And what about our indigenous friends? When do them we see and say their names? Such as John T. Williams,
John T. Williams,
Autumn Mae Steele,
Autumn Mae Steele,
Paul Castaway.
Paul Castaway.
We say their names to carve out walls and make paths for waterfalls. We say their names to be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We say their names to tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. We say their names to be like Daniel with no doubt in the lion's den. We say their names to be like Moses, handling the rod that became the serpent. We say their names to be like 2 fishes and 5 loaves of bread, feeding more people than anyone ever thought could be fed. We say their names to look at our hands and see they look new. We say their names to look at our feet and see that they do too. We say their names so the stars will marvel at us. We say their names because in our oneness we trust. We say their names to sing them a love song, and we invite you to sing along. We say their names.
We say their names. We say their names. We say their names. We say their names. We say their names.
And now I'd like to ask you to hum along. We say their names to hold and wrap them in our arms. We say their names to linger with their precious charms. We say their names because the children are our future and our wealth. We say their names because living as one, united. I think that might be the definition of good mental health. We say their names to paraphrase John Lennon. Imagine, if you can, a brotherhood, a simple brotherhood of man. And speaking of a simple brotherhood of man, I want to take us to a new place for a minute and ask our white friends in the audience to identify 5 white anti-racist people, if you can. 5 anti-racist white people, if you can. Just think about it. I'm taking a page from Black history teacher Ernest Krim III, who is also making the case for unity, in case you hadn't heard. When Americans know more about Ann McCarty Braden than Ron DeSantis, then we're going to have a much better chance at this, a much better chance of making change, changing the game, in fact, turning the game on its head. So in case you just forgot what I just said, speaking of John Lennon's simple brotherhood of man, identify 5 white anti-racist people, if you can, just in your head. How about Levi Coffin, Viola Liuzzo, and William Lloyd Garrison, Frederick Douglass's right-hand man, Seth Coughlin, oh my goodness, and Prudence Crandall, whose teaching of free Black girls got her blackballed, got her victimized and terrorized, and the school set on fire, even though she went higher and higher. Eventually, Crandall was forced to shut her school down. The Black children were effectively run out of town. All of us, all people, should know all of their names, making them more famous than the dividers, like Vince's governor in Florida. That should be our aim. Let the righteous people be the ones with all the fame. Let us remember that love is not always tame. Sometimes we have to push. So let's push folks famous just for being famous to another plane. Call it obscurity. Tell the media over and over, these are the heroes that we claim. We cannot let climate deniers, plastic polluters, and the racist signifiers win at their shady, destructive game. Come on and say their names. Let us be phenomenal, doing things phenomenally. Holler or put something in the chat if you're hearing me. We say their names because as things are and always were, the environment is us, the flowers, the trees. We are all nature. We say their names to be like Sister Harriet, who I think everybody at the conference has invoked. We want to be like Sister Harriet and wade in the water on a spirit-supplied chariot.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
We say their names, and like Curtis Mayfield, we keep on pushing.
Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing.
We keep on pushing and move on up a little higher, because unity, oneness as elements of nature is our grand desire. And then we just be open, be kind to ourselves and others, and we will see, just be righteous, be at rest, be at peace, and we will see that if we just be, being in a love story is all it claims to be. As Dr. Maya Angelou said, love asks all we are and will ever be. And yet, it is only love that sets us free. We say their names so the stars will marvel at us. We say their names so that in our oneness we trust. Let us be like Aaliyah. Rise, children, rise. Say their names. Know that we don't have to be perfect to do perfect work. Keep on pushing.
Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing. Mm-hmm. Keep on pushing.
Say their names. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I wanted to ask you, this presentation, with this book, with everything you do, and I mentioned this in the intro, love is such an important component. And in this case, when we are in a fight, we are in a struggle, we need to be fearless, as you said. How do we keep love as part of the mix?
It's the foundation. It's everything. And as we saw and say their names, it starts with loving yourself. So much of the attacks that we are facing are designed to keep us from loving ourselves, to keep us from thinking that we're worthy, that we're phenomenal. Whether you are Black, white, straight, gay, rich, poor, an immigrant, all these attacks are meant to make you feel small, to make you feel unworthy of human rights, to make you feel unworthy of clean air, to make you feel unworthy of affordable housing. And so if people can dispirit us by making us think that we are small and insignificant, we can't win. We can't win. So loving ourselves first and foremost, and of course, not in a selfish way, but in a way that lets us know that we have a right. As Karen sang in the last Taking Nature Black conference, we have a right to the tree of life. Everything that life offers, we have a right to that. And then loving others, which is, of course, very difficult to do all the time. And I'm not talking about strangers or the people on TV who are constantly heaving hateful rhetoric at us. It's difficult sometimes to love our families and our friends in the way that true love, we're not talking about romantic love. The love story aspect of this was just a twist, a metaphor. But if we think about what it means to love our family members and our friends, it requires a sacrifice. It requires patience. It requires forgiveness. It requires reflection. Sometimes it requires rest. Like, oh, okay, can't do you right now. I have got to step back. But it's the only force that will lead us to success. We have seen that throughout history.
When you talk to people about gathering their gifts, and especially when you talk to children, how do you explain that to them? What do you want them to come away with that idea?
Well, it doesn't require much explanation. Children are just brilliant. They are so thoughtful and open, and they are clear. One of the things I've said for a long time, going back to that book that you mentioned, the first book, it was considered a difficult topic, but my author friend, Michelle Pettis, who I mentioned earlier, who gave that really beautiful definition of love, working toward the highest and the best outcomes for everybody, she talked about, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought.
But I wanted to interrupt you anyway, because I want to give people context, because the book is Kara Finds Sunshine on a Rainy Day. So give folks some context, because to me, similar to Say Their Names, you're covering a very heavy topic with that book.
Thank you. That's the point. So Michelle said, no, these aren't heavy topics. These are not difficult topics. These are important topics. And that's what children have taught me. I wrote Kara Finds Sunshine on a Rainy Day after 9/11. I was living outside of New York City in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. About a third of the adults who lived there worked in New York. And the friend of one of my best friends was killed in the attack. And that same friend's husband worked in the towers, just so happened to be away from work in Arizona when the attack happened. And then a third friend was standing outside the towers when the second plane hit. She had to walk home, take a ferry from New York to New Jersey, and then walk up the entire New Jersey Turnpike. So all these children, their families were affected by this. And, there were teachers who were saying that the kids were drawing pictures of what they saw on television. So it was playing over and over in their heads, and they needed the support of adults to help them process it. And so that's what I get when I talk to children about their gifts. I actually hand them a piece of paper or a bookmark that has one of 31, 32 gifts that I identified that Aaliyah takes with her on her journey. And then after we read the story together, I ask them, which gift did they get? And how, and where in the story did they see Aaliyah using that gift? And how do they think they can use that gift in their lives? And they nail it every time.
What has it meant to you to see that reaction in children? Because again, because I imagine there's tons of questions about the book and about the subject matter, but for that part, when children are identifying their gifts, what does that mean to you? How do you react to that?
It means everything. It's the reason I do what I do, and that might sound cliche, but let me tell you, if you do work that people consider hard or difficult, every response that's affirming, regardless of where it comes from, that's your oxygen, that's your fuel, that's what's going to keep you going. And the children they're just so beautiful. You know that. Anybody who's been around children, they're so loving and affirming. But also, don't sleep on the children. They are insightful. So with that first book, Find Sunshine on a Rainy Day, I went to read to a group of children in a group home. There were 55 children, and the counselors initially told me, oh, we don't want you to read to all 55 kids. We want to break them up into groups of 5. And I said, oh, no, we're not doing that. Are you kidding me? Read the book 11 times? They didn't trust the kids. They said, oh, they're antsy and talkative, and, they just presented them as a problem. I said, I'm going to do 2 sessions. There were 30 boys and 25 girls. So I read the book. A few days later, the counselors called me and they said, we hope you're sitting down. And I said, I am. And they said, we want to share part of a thank you letter that one of the children wrote. We asked them all to write thank you letters, but there was a boy, 11 years old, named Miles, who had been at the group home for 6 months. He had never spoken to anybody. He hadn't made any friends. This child had self-muted himself. And they said, after you came and read Find Sunshine on a Rainy Day, a little book about a little girl, this 11-year-old boy in the 6th grade, they said he started speaking. And he wrote me this beautiful letter that I still have. And it says, Caroline and friends, you guys changed my life around. And they said he opened up like a flower. And what was so nice for me is that he didn't have a mentor. So for his last 8 or 9 months in the group home, I volunteered to be his mentor.
It's a powerful story. I want to keep sticking with the focus on children. But, talking about the point that we need to recognize that we are in a love story, and especially when we're talking about the environment. 2 things come to mind. We've talked about love as that component, but what about the component of story? How is storytelling so important in getting across everything that we love and want to protect about the environment or any issue? How important is the storytelling?
I think it's everything. It's so interesting when we're in a love story. Can't keep it a secret, can we? Nope. If we think we're keeping it a secret, somebody who knows us really well is going to figure it out. Like, you're behaving differently. And then when we start talking about it, we are effusive. You can't shut us up. And so that's what needs to happen right now with us in this movement. We need to be even more effusive. We need to keep talking about the importance of the environment and in ways that are creative, not with just the facts. The facts are important. We have the facts on our side, but we've got to come up with ways to tell stories that will touch people. And I had a thought, we've been through this new era since President Obama left office, where people who are spewing all this hate and not only misinformation, disinformation, outright lies and fantasies. We keep hearing about them on the news night after night after night after night. We should be hearing about this crisis we're in night after night after night after night. We ought to be on the news, in the newspapers, on blogs. Our house is on fire, so it is said. We got years before more catastrophe strikes even more people. So, yes, thank you. Storytelling, it needs to be our number one priority, and committing ourselves to ways to get that story out in the media every single day. We need to hold the media accountable for doing more.
We have a question in the chat that's related to that. Telling that story and kind of immersing yourself in the telling of the story, the researching it, the writing it. These can be very upsetting stories. I mean, these are very difficult subject matter. How do you, as a writer, comfort yourself so that you don't get overwhelmed in trying to tell this story in an effective way?
So as I was thinking about this blueprint that Aaliyah laid out for us, the fifth thing that she does, the fight. She keeps fighting. She learns how to fight harder and smarter by knowing her history. When we learn our history, what our ancestors went through, that helps us to keep going. And that helps us, we look at their stories and see how creative and imaginative and bold they were. And so we have to do the same thing. We've got to dig deeper. And if we look at history, those 5 white people who were anti-racist, of course, there's so many. But the reason I put that in there was because I was inspired by what Mr. Krim is doing. What he's saying is we need to put these people who are role models in the front of us. They need to be at the front of our thought. And when we look back at all of these people, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, Native American, we will see people who were fierce fighters, who were creative, and who were insistent on telling their stories because the work was so important. I mean, it's all of these people, it was about life and death, and it is that for us now.
Caroline, here's what troubles me, and here's the real challenge with that, because what you say is true, knowing that history. But we live in a time when there is a drive to quickly and totally erase our history and erase the telling of that history. What do?
We challenge it. We become even more committed and more creative about how to tell that history. In your great state of Florida, which is, creating this really destructive and damaging model. I mean, talking about shutting down colleges and eliminating courses. When when we eliminate Black history, we eliminate American history, and we eliminate not only the painful parts, but the parts that are so remarkable and that will help us see our way forward. So we are going to have to step up our game. You know, that's what Aaliyah did. When you love yourself, when you got something to fight for, you step up your game. All of us, we've got to do more. We're gonna have to take some risks. Because how dare they? How dare they?
And Caroline, you said an important word in there. I hope people didn't miss it. What they're trying to do in Florida is a model. So don't think that if you don't live in Florida, you don't have to worry about it. This is a model that there is a hope that can be replicated.
Yes. Everything throughout the history of this country, there were people who created these models of terror to see how far they could go. And it was only pushback. It was only pushback, consistent pushback. And yes, that meant that some people lost their lives. But hello, we're losing our lives, our livelihoods, if we don't fight back. Everything that we hold dear. So, you know, I used a children's book to bring this story of a way forward to us. But everybody who really understands what picture books, children's books are about, usually the ideas are profound. And what I say is my experience talking to children about so-called difficult subjects, when I talk to children about the ugliness in the world, they always respond with beauty, like that 11-year-old boy, Miles. When they get clear about what's going on in a way that obviously, depending on the age, is gentler than what an adult would be exposed to. Now they can cope because school shootings, pandemics, wars, this is a part of their everyday lives. And so what do we want to do with our children? We cannot shield them from these realities. We must prepare them. We want strong children because in a minute, they're going to be adults. And we want adults who have strength, who have empathy, who know how to rely on their imaginations to work through problems. Our imaginations are our greatest form of technology. Sorry, iPhone, iPad,
Thank you.
AI.
Right.
No, it's what we got up here.
And I want to ask you, you talked a little bit about the reaction from children. What has been the reaction from adults? This is a children's book, but it's got to pass through the hands of a lot of adults, librarians, teachers, parents, to get to children. What are adults telling you?
Adults are telling me that they really appreciate how I handled a difficult, complicated subject with grace, with finesse, with poetry, in a way that left them hopeful and energized. And one of my book launch parties, I had 3 in one day. Did I tell you about that? I know, it was nuts. That won't happen again. But it did happen back in the fall. And so there was a father in the audience. He brought his son, who's just sweet and lovely and wonderful. And when it was over, the son was telling me how much he loved the book. But the father, he didn't do this, but it was almost as if, he kind of pushed him out of the way and because he had a story he wanted to tell. And what he said was a week before, a dear friend had died suddenly, unexpectedly, and he said he had had no rest, no peace for that entire week. He said, I want you to know that after you read that story to us, that you allowed us to read it with you, I found the first peace, the first measure of peace that I've had in an entire week. That was so meaningful to me. And you know, we had this storytelling workshop with Eliza in the Conservation Cafe. And what I say to anybody who wants to tell a story that has impact, you have to put your heart and your soul into it. It is probably not going to be the first draft or the second or the third or the fourth. But if you do that, and that's been my story, things that I never imagined were possible, reactions, those things happened, and they became food for my soul. That's why I'm still here doing this thing.
Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, of course, we've gone right up to the last minute, as I knew we would, but thank you. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at the live day of the conference. We're going to talk about another book that you spearheaded, the Belonging ebook, picture book, and we'll really get a chance to celebrate that tomorrow. So again, thanks for being with us. Thank all of our attendees for being here this evening. And we hope to see everybody at the Silver Spring
Wilson,
Civic
Ama
Center.
Achefu, Al McCrae.
So much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. They really, really lent so much to this experience. I hope you all felt it as deeply as I did. And thank you, Vince, again, and to all of Nature Forward's team, Taking Nature Black committees. It's been a marvelous conference, and I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of it in this way.
Thank you. And have a good night, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.